Hey, She Ace That listeners, find us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Every subscribe, like, and follow goes a long way, and I can't thank you all enough for your support. And with that, let's get into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to She Ace That. It's your host Alexandra, and I'm so excited to share with you guys today's guest. But before we do that, let me give you a little quick life update because I need you all to know how much I'm dying physically right now. If you are invited to go back to your college club team, your high school team, and play in a tournament with current athletes as an alumni, I highly recommend to gear up for it, work out before it, stretch before and after, and you're still going to feel like your body is giving up on you. But this past weekend, I played in the Michigan State tournament on an alumni team, and we made it all the way to the semifinals in silver, which I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And we could have won the silver bracket, but all of us were like done that last couple of games. Nobody can move their feet. We're all just standing there. There's nothing more in our gas tank, like absolutely nothing. And my body today, like this is 2 days later that I'm recording this. I have not slept the past 2 nights because my body feels so inflamed and miserable. And yeah, I forgot what it felt like to dive on the floor multiple times over and over and play as a middle. It's so worth it. It was so much fun. It felt so fulfilling to feel like an athlete again. And something about stepping back on that court with the woman who loved this game as much as I do that just fills your soul. I haven't played in about 6 years, and seeing a lot of the faces of my old teammates or girls that I coached that I haven't seen in a long time was just amazing. Like, we all put so much time and energy into that club. Like, if you don't know about college club sports, you're pretty much running a club all on your own. Like, you're not getting support from your school. They're not driving your budget or setting things up for you. You're finding tournaments, you're fundraising, you're in control of your club success and the years that follow while you're in the club. It just put into perspective how appreciative I am of the girls that led the club before me, the girls that led the club and continue to after me, and that we had the opportunity to get back on the court and play in a tournament that, one day, a lot of high school athletes experience this if they don't play a sport in college. It's that last time you're playing in a game on the court or tournament. Like, yes, there's rec leagues. Yes, you can play competitively and in other ways, but to be a part of a team that you're practicing with every day, that you're showing up every day, the drive to want to get the next point, that was just amazing to feel again. And I feel like that's something athletes struggle with, is once they're done being actual competitive athletes, is like, we might not think about it day to day, but like, we are missing a huge part of ourselves. Let's say you didn't play sport in college. That was many years of going to practices after school, sacrificing other things for the sport that you loved. It's something that when you can get it back, like this tournament for me, it just puts things into perspective of how much you miss it, how fun it is, and how good it can be. And one other cool thing was we were playing for fun. We didn't come in saying, yeah, well, let's try to win the tournament. Yeah, let's try to beat these teams that practice for hours every week, that play for 2-day tournaments. These girls are practicing together. For the alumni team, it's just random people from different years that are playing. It was relieving, actually, to play, besides wanting to show up for each other on the court, and that being our genuine intention. There was nothing to lose. Didn't matter if we won or lost. It didn't matter if we played our best ever or our worst ever. It was like, hey, we're all here to have fun, and let's show up on the court together. And I thought that was really cool. And I wish more competitive teams almost took that dynamic. Like, yes, work hard. Yes, keep having the same goal, the same team values. But when you're all there for the right reason and for the same end goal, and the stakes don't feel high, it's an amazing thing. It really filled my soul to play volleyball for 12 hours. And now I'm paying the price. But if you ever get the opportunity, do it, or have your high school or club set up an alumni tournament. Like, try to take initiative and do it, because it's so worth it. Yes, it's work to get it all up and running. Yes, it's work to get everybody on the same page, but do it because you're going to fulfill something in you that you haven't felt in a long time. And it was super fun. Speaking of things that have been filling my soul lately, I've been trying to prioritize my mental health because life's freaking crazy. And one of the simplest things that I noticed that I've heard others talk about, I haven't really bought into it yet, still haven't bought into it fully, but it's true when it happens, is that getting up in the morning, seeing the sun, like tying that to your circadian rhythm. So, like, if you work from home, this is where this doesn't happen because you're just staying in your home. But let's say you have to drive somewhere in the morning, you have to drop your kids off at daycare, you have to drive to work. I took my son to my mom's the other morning for me to work, and the sun was coming up, and that morning light and that quiet time in the car and like just listening to music and seeing the sunrise and seeing everybody else starting their days, that morning light, it was so beneficial mentally. I was like immediate dopamine rush seeing the sunrise. And I was like, okay, maybe, again, I'm not there yet. So we're not getting crazy. We're not like, yep, tomorrow 5 a.m. wake up call. No, that's not happening. It's going to be gradual. But my goal is to actually start getting up at the same time every day, going to a workout class even once a week, right? Like small goals are good goals. And that's the way to actually make things manageable and obtainable. So I noticed how happy that made me that day. It literally made my day better just being out and about while the sun was coming up, because I work from home. I'm home all day, every day. I'm trapped in my home. And my son's normally home too, which I'm so lucky for. And I feel so blessed to have that. I wouldn't want it any other way. But I just realized that that was something that I was like, yeah, I felt that little bit of out of my normal, day-to-day life. We're not going to always feel the happiest. We're not always going to feel the lowest, which is probably for the best. But when you do feel those little highs that aren't scrolling your phone, just notice those for yourself. It was something for me that I noticed that I was like, oh, if I did this every day, yeah, it would suck to get up and leave the house when I'm not used to it, or get up earlier to go work out to get home. But then I'm like, no, like this is actually how life used to be before COVID and before remote work. And the reality was that people got up, they were probably driving to their job when the sun was rising. And it was like, I feel like a little bit better times. I know there's so many factors, but I just think it's really interesting that that was something that was consistent in everybody's lives. And now it's not as much. And that's one of my goals going into 2026. I'm going to start it sooner, but it's going to be a gradual thing. So I'm geared up for next year. And we talk a lot on this podcast about training our bodies, but those moments of peace and like just presence, like you are in that moment and you're present, they matter just as much. My self-discipline is not good right now. That is something I am working on. I am a splurger. I am not even thinking about what I'm eating. I am not thinking about forcing myself to go to the gym. I am just living life with minimal tolerance because I feel so tired. I'm worn out. I have a lot on my plate and I know it's temporary. So I'm just going through with it. But it's always good to take those moments when we are in the middle of chaos and things are so busy to check in with ourselves and be like, okay, what do I need this week? Like, what is one thing that I can set aside to make sure happens for me so that I have a little bit, either a weight lifted off me mentally or just a better mental week in general. And there's like McDonald's right across the street from my house. And yeah, like 10 years ago, would that have been my dream, going to McDonald's before or after school, literally being able to walk there before I had a car? Like, yeah, I would have loved, that would have been everything. Now it's like testing my self-discipline. And everybody listening probably like, I don't really care, Alexandra, like go eat your McDonald's down the road. Like nobody cares. But my point here is me being well acquainted with the McDonald's down the road is something I do have to check myself on. And I have to be like, do I have to spend that $5 today? Right? There's like a financial thing, there's a physical thing, and there's a mental thing. And I think I'm just working on testing my brain and being like, no, you actually don't need it. You can go home and make your food that you have at home already. Every time we have like a habit or, something that we don't love, but that we just want to work on, whether that's stopping at McDonald's, whether that's going to bed earlier, whether that's getting up earlier, whether that's eating better, whatever it is, until we show our brain, hey, you're actually okay if you don't do this, or you're going to survive if you don't do this, it makes us a little bit more tolerable to changes. and shows that we're capable of executing changes. Those golden arches always call my name. Most of the time I answer, but we're working on it. And that's for like everything in life. So just take that analogy for what it is. Treat yourself to the McDonald's sometimes, but like also test yourself. Find things that you can work on for yourself to make your brain and body stronger, which is my goal for next year. And again, starting this year, but going into next year. And we're all works in progresses. So with that, today we are diving into something that I truly believe separates good athletes from elite athletes, and that's the mental game. This is the second week in our mental toughness series. My guest this week is Jess Knecht, and she is one of the leading voices in elite mindset coaching for volleyball. She's a partner at Max Out Mindset. She co-hosts an incredible podcast, and she's worked with Division I athletes, championship teams, and professional players, including members of the Omaha Supernovas. She has her master's in psychology and trains athletes, coaches, and teams on what she calls the 4 C's of elite mindset: commitment, confidence, concentration, and composure. What I love most about this conversation is just how practical it is. You guys are going to be able to leverage so much of this and enact in it right away. Jess doesn't just tell you that mindset matters. She gives you actual tools and strategies that you can use. Whether you're an athlete struggling with mistakes, a coach trying to build team chemistry, or a parent wondering how to support your kid through the ups and downs of competitive sports, this episode has something for you. We talk about role acceptance, vulnerability, how to rebuild confidence after errors, and why mindset training isn't about being weak. It's actually your competitive advantage. And for all my coaches listening, Jess shares incredible advice on creating psychologically safe spaces for your teams while maintaining high standards. This conversation just made me wish I had access to this kind of training when I was playing or coaching. The way Jess breaks down the mental game is so clear, so actionable, and so necessary for athletes at every level. I think nowadays more than ever, it is critical as a player, as a coach, as a parent to understand the mental side of the game. Mental for performance coaches are more common now than ever. I'm sure when I was playing, there were resources, but nobody knew about them. Nobody talked about them. And now with all the factors we have in the world, especially with social media and expectations, I think it is so critical. Every single athlete, I know it's easier said than done, and there's a price point to it, but should have access to resources for their mental health and their mental strength. And I think we'd all be better off in this world if we all had those tools to catalyst us to something that we deserve to be. So with that, I'm really excited for you guys to hear this. And let's dive into my conversation with Jess Knecht. Jess Knecht, welcome to She Ace That.
Thank you. Very excited to join you today, and very thankful to listen to your podcast as well. You've had some great guests, and I've learned from each and every one of them. So thanks for holding a platform.
Thank you. Thank you. And I could say the same for you. I saw Jess's social media pages, and she just shares incredible content. So if you're looking for further information at the end of this episode, we'll definitely share her links. And I do want to start, Jess, that you were a multi-sport athlete at Northwestern College. So what was your athletic experience like? And when did you first realize the power of the mental game?
You bet. And volleyball was my fun sport. I didn't want to run cross country. So everybody did volleyball, and that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to have FOMO, but basketball was my main drive. And then I ended up going to Northwestern to run track and field. And so I really enjoyed track because it wasn't my primary sport. So in college, I learned that secondary sport. And through that, I learned how the mental game really shapes performance. I didn't know how to necessarily communicate it at that time, but within track, it's me versus myself and the clock. There were maybe 6 to 7 other runners against me, but I think running track and being a college athlete helped me with owning my own mental side of the game, but also how to be a physical athlete, owning time management to academics, to being a great teammate, and then ultimately what it means to be a great leader.
Love that. Yeah, no, that's incredible how it is an individual dynamic versus team dynamic, but either way, you still have to be strong as an individual, right? And there's so many things that can make that up. I do want to dive into Max Out Mindset and the 4 C's associated with that. So what does it mean to be a partner in Max Out Mindset?
Yeah, Dr. Larry Woodman, he goes by Doc in the mindset world. And I think the world of excellence, and when you pursue excellence, you start to attract other professionals or other contacts that are maybe moving towards the same direction. And so because the volleyball world is a small world and relationships are valued, we would often cross paths at local high school volleyball games, collegiate volleyball games. I met him 4 years ago at a Husker red and white scrimmage there in Lincoln, Nebraska at the Devaney Center. And he was working with a local high school at the time. And one of my friends was a coach, and she had experienced what mindset training was at a high level. And so he did teach the elite mindset. And so we got to talking, and I was passionate about this. I just didn't know what it was because I think a lot of athletes back in the Midwest are so skilled in their X's and O's of their sport. But at the time, a decade ago, was there really an emphasis on mindset and confidence? And so that's what I love
Mhm.
the most about coaching. And so with that, a conversation led, and now he's a business partner and mentor today. We have another business partner, Scott. He's currently on the East Coast working within the basketball world. He has an elite daughter and son in that world out there. And so it's us three, and we're very thankful to train the elite mindset. And so when it comes to that, we believe that there's 4 C's that you can train. And any athlete in sport, we also have business professionals train this. And I think the first one is commitment. In order to be great at something, it's going to take commitment. And commitment is a choice. And then after that commitment, we train the 3 other C's in confidence, concentration, and composure. And we always tell our athletes, I can't train concentration and composure unless I can attack commitment and confidence.
Can you break these down for us a little bit further? What does true commitment look like beyond just showing up to practice?
You bet. And I think commitment could be a buzzword, but commitment
Mhm.
truly means it's a choice that can I do my job? Can I do it consistently, even in the days maybe my emotion or my feeling doesn't want to do it? So, for example, that can lead to discipline. That can lead to holding a standard. There's an accountability to commitment. And so, what we encourage our athletes is to look at yourself as a whole athlete. And am I preparing well? And preparing means it can come from physical reps in the gym, can become, am I committed to getting the appropriate hours of sleep? Am I committed to my nutrition? Am I committed to being, right, a healthy athlete that I am more than just the sport I play? And so commitment, there's a huge bubble, but most importantly, we talk about what does our commitment look like in the gym? And then what does it look outside of the gym? And then there are certain other categories that fall into that. And most importantly, commitment would be one of those things that a lot of athletes, as they go from youth, competitive high school, college, pro, and so on, that commitment demands a lot more. But those skills are built early in their youth.
Yeah. And I think it shows, you can just be showing up to practices, but there's something more like how ready are you and how willing are you there to show up for yourself and everybody else as well. It's not about just physically being present. And I think that's a really huge thing for all athletes to understand and coaches too, right? Like there's multiple ways to show commitment from a confidence standpoint. So the second C, so many athletes struggle with confidence and people in general, whether it's on the court or off the court, especially after making mistakes. And I think that goes tied to like a perfectionism part, but I've never met an athlete that, hasn't made a mistake or error to learn from. So what are your go-to strategies for rebuilding confidence quickly or building it from the start?
It's crazy, but you can actually train confidence. It's not like we wake up one morning and I'm confident as ever and I can go
Mhm.
conquer the world or my sport. But I think our athletes need to realize that training confidence is a competitive advantage. And so at Max Out Mindset, my business partners and I train. There's 6 ingredients. And that first ingredient is that preparation and hard work that's also tied to commitment. The second is your self talk. And on average, we have 50,000 plus thoughts that go on through our brain every day. And I'm probably listening to myself the most versus maybe what's external. And so, can I, one, have a strategy to be able to work through some maybe negative thoughts? But even before a strategy, I need to have awareness. And that's what we say here at Max Out Mindset is that the best of the best struggle with similar things that we all struggle with. But what they do better is they consistently have awareness and they can apply a strategy. So, within that self talk, there's also, hey, how do my teammates and coaches say or do that helps or hinders my confidence? And then we have 4 through 6 ingredients that have to do with family. There's a spiritual component. Past success also plays a role in our confidence. And then being able to, there's an ultimate trust team aspect to this. And so we train individuals how to manage their own space with confidence, but we also train teams. And within teams, we do ultimate trust and we do a lot of team exercises that help develop that chemistry, both physically, but also within the team mindset. Because you can have an individual mindset, but a team mindset, that's where the
Mhm.
competitive advantage comes from.
The more times that you maybe push yourself out of your comfort zone to become more confident in areas that you weren't prior, it's actually a positive for your brain to recognize I can do that, or it's something that you really have to firmly believe and allow time to show that for yourself. When we go to concentration in volleyball, a single point can change the momentum of any game, any set. How do you train athletes to maintain concentration in those higher pressure moments? Let's say you're going to the finals in a national championship, or you're playing an undefeated team.
Yeah, and that's a $1,000,000 question.
Mhm,
Everybody wants to train confidence and concentration. And so I do think, what you were talking about earlier was reframing. Hey, I
mhm,
have this thought. It's either helping or hindering me. If it's hindering, here's how I can reframe it. That's where we apply the strategy. Concentration comes in. It's as simple. I like to break it down is majority of my teams and athletes are focused, hyper
mhm,
focused to the point where we might over fixate because we're so focused. But again, it's the refocus, and that's where
mhm,
the sweet spot is we could be 13 all in a 3rd set for a club volleyball match, and it's a match to go to gold, and so my body starts freaking out, maybe I'm short of breath, I'm sweating, I'm overthinking, and so this concentration piece is, what is my strategy to refocus? And that's where, at least from my highly effective and elite athletes, they choose to get external. So what do I need from a teammate? Maybe it's a handhold, eye contact, and it could be that eye contact show like prove to me that I can go make this next play and I can go be great. Even if that next play, right, might not go in our favor, but at least I know that I can execute that. And then the second thing is what does it mean to physically, right, reset or ground myself? So if I'm a up regulator, maybe it's a deep breath that keeps me cool and calm with eye contact of my teammate.
mhm,
Maybe I need to clap because I'm a down regulator and maybe I need to be a little bit more up so it helps keep me calm. And so I think our athletes really learn one awareness of what I need and what's going to help me refocus. And then through that process, we teach all of our athletes and teams, steps to how they visualize
mhm.
before. Maybe it's in between points. They have something that they're thinking about, or maybe they're not thinking at all. And we just help them stay calm. So those are some strategies for concentration. It's different for every athlete, every team, but self-talk, and then I would think the power of breath and getting external really help that.
And that probably ties into, like, the last C of composure, right? So, like, when you're able to unlock that concentration properly, then that will filter into, like, your composure, and how.
A quote from, the GOAT, Jordan Larson, a
Yeah.
former athlete at Nebraska, Olympian. Now she's part of LOVB. Really respect her. And she says, calm breeds calm. And that quote was taken off of a presser her last year of coaching there at Nebraska a couple years ago. And I think she hit it right on the head is if you can train these skills and you can continue to be consistent, we're not always going to get it right. But the more you understand yourself, the better teammate, the better leader. And when it comes to composure, if I'm not training the first, second, or third C, there's no way to have composure because I don't have a strategy. And so we mix everything that we've learned from the first 3 Cs. And Doc and I always have this solution, but I 100% believe in myself because of my self talk, because of my mental training, because of my personal strategies. The second part of that is I know my teammates and coaches trust me that what I'm about to do is going to be great. Even if, right, what I just executed wasn't great, I know what's to come is going to be great. And that's part of composure. That's part of grit, resilience, winning in whatever moment in your sport that's next. That's where that all compounds together and it results in composure. And there's moments, and I always say this as a disclaimer, we could do everything right. You could do
Yeah.
everything right to the T, almost near perfection, but that outcome, it's not always guaranteed. But at least
Mhm.
I know I've earned my own self respect in my teams that I did everything that I could to put ourselves in a position to max out when it matters most.
When you see athletes getting in their head after mistakes, right? No matter the level, let's say they're a college volleyball player. Obviously, they revert back and focus on that confidence and composure and concentration of trusting that even though they made that mistake, this next point, they're pretty much given a blank slate to prove to their teammates, their coaches, themselves that they're able to execute after a mistake. Do you see them having to rely on other tools to kind of have that short-term memory?
Yeah, again, great question. And I think every athlete is different. The
Mhm.
demand for each level and division of your sport demands a little bit different. And sometimes the stakes are a lot. But again, I'm not going to shortchange it. Every athlete deals with pressure. And so one of the key things I think about is sometimes if you're brand new to mindset, it's really just figuring out one, am I putting in the reps, the preparation, dedication that the sport demands? because reps builds confidence. If I have a libero working on passing seam to their left and maybe they're struggling, but they haven't maybe put in extra reps, asked for help for coaching, watched film, owned some of those things, that's where I would start first. Then I'm going to pair that with the mindset of how's our self talk when I make an error in the seam to my left? I
Mhm.
suck. I'm not as good as so and so. Man, maybe why am I even playing volleyball? I never can get this right. Okay, wow. Now we can start to identify what's truth versus reality. And so
Mhm.
that's where we'll start to help. A key indicator when an athlete struggles, it's the first sign is your body language. And so I think the biggest thing is can you put in the reps physically? Secondly, identify that one negative thought that we can start to flip and reframe to a positive is I know I can pass to my left. You can do a technical. Hey, I just need to track early, right? Keep spacing, defensive posture, whatever that technical cue would be. For example, I'm passing to my left, or it could be an affirmation, right? Hey, you put in the hours in the gym, you pass to your left 100 plus times, serve me the ball. I can do this. So there's a different way that you can use a technical or affirmation within that self talk as you're learning a skill, but it all depends. That's what I love about training mindset is if you're passionate about growing your game here, there's so many lessons that we can learn from those that have already gone before us. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of elite level athletes that are doing this now at 15, 16, 17. I can't wait till they get to college.
Do you think there's a specific age that our athletes should start focusing on their mental strength? Like, do you think it's a whenever they start sports, or is there the best age to maybe kind of tap into that?
You know, I every every athlete that I've had a chance who's maybe in finishing college or pros, I think they've all wanted or maybe expressed, I wish I had this sooner. And so,
Mhm.
I think it all depends on the type of athlete. I think if an athlete is willing and they want to do it, it's not parent led or demanded. I think there could be success. I also have athletes at that sweet spot of 14, 15, 16, 17. But I don't think there's any right age. I think it depends on the athlete and their intention and
Mhm.
their purpose behind it because ultimately it's your commitment that drives your choice.
That's fair. And I think again, every situation is different. So some might be ready for it versus others, and some might need to be tapped into to unlock what they're going through and how they can excel and succeed versus just turning inward and kind of isolating it. It's better to talk it out and see how you can get help. Like coaches are there to help you.
Good
People
point.
like yourself and your organizations are there to help you. And I think sometimes it's looked down upon internally when we are looking for that help, but it's actually the opposite. It should be rewarded and needs to continue being talked about on multiple fronts. And one other thing is that max out mindset emphasizes something called ultimate trust. So that's built through two key elements: role acceptance and building deeper relationships through vulnerability. I feel like role acceptance specifically, especially in volleyball, is something that can either hold people back from continuing in their sport or their team or actually be a catalyst for them. So, how do you help athletes who feel maybe they deserve a different role in their team accept where they are and where that can get them?
This is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
You're bringing it up, which is great. I think ultimately, as athletes, we want to do sport because we want to win. I ask my athletes and teams, Doc does as well, what's most important here? And ultimately, they say something with an outcome of winning. And we like to say, each and every one of you, coaches included, has a role and will impact winning. At any given moment, you could be in your primary role or secondary role. And it's your choice if you choose to stay engaged. And can you stick to those 4 C's when you have your role or when you don't? And we encourage and we talk with our coaches specifically on how to communicate effectively what that role is. And so we also adapt, something very similar, that term ultimate trust was from Doc when he worked, back in the day with Nebraska and Coach Cook. And it was a phrase that was from Jam the Gym. And so it's being this collective phrase of ultimate trust. And we believe it's trained and it's trained time in, time out, and it's also trained in practice. And so within those roles, they can change at any moment. But if the coach has effectively shared the role of that athlete, and at any given moment, they can go be a game changer. And that's something the U.S. women's national team has adopted. We had a really great conversation with Coach Cook the other day about this and how he did it at Nebraska. But can you be in the right mindset and the physical readiness to go have your moment whenever the team needs you? And
Mhm.
can you be committed to the day to day when nobody's watching, the bright lights aren't on you, you might not be on TV, it might not be on social media. Can you stay
Yeah.
committed to this process? And can you stay
Mm.
committed to your team? I'm going to call out two professional athletes that really spoke about this really well. Annie Drews on our podcast talked about, in Tokyo Olympics, all right, her role going into it and that right side role Was she always the starter? No, she came in after Jordan Thompson had an ankle injury. And
Mhm.
so Annie owned her role. And you'll hear that on our podcast. And I'll let those two talk about it because Jordan talks about it and Annie talks about it. And then I'm going to fast forward too. One of, the national teammates that they had was Kelsey Robinson.
Mhm.
She was on another podcast and she talked really beautifully about every athlete should have the role, right? And go after the role that they want. And if at any given moment your jersey number is not called, it's okay to want to have that and be that. But when it
Mhm.
becomes destructive to selfishness and it hinders the team, we probably need to check that. And so it's always having that teammate in mind and knowing there's a competitive chemistry in that gym. And my role might be to be so excellent on this B side or scout side that I prepare that A side to go battle against our
Mhm.
opponent. Maybe I need to scout and stat or evaluate what my teammate needs as shot selection so she can go be great. Maybe coach says I need to go in and I need to go change a game. So my role is going to be I need to score a point. I need to terminate. I need to right serve aggressively into my location. And if I only get to play one rotation and I can hold serve and get my team 2 or 3 points, by gosh, I'm going to be the best server out there and I'm going to do my job. If that's what my team needs to succeed, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
This is so hard to do. So hard. Most athletes don't want to do it because they are not guaranteed the outcome that it benefits them. And with
Mhm.
mindset training and team training, we're going to help teams and athletes work through this. You can still be great. You can still want to go have that starting position or that top goal you want. But can you have the same mindset to do it with your team and allow your team to help you get that? And if it's not you, then you better celebrate the heck out of the teammate that got it because ultimately, when we win, right? Everybody wins when we choose to have that perspective. If it's all about it's gonna be a long journey, and you're not always gonna get what you want. And I hate to say it, life isn't fair.
No, it's so true. And I think a lot of athletes forget that. Like, if you are not a starter, if you are not somebody initially always on the court or having the most playing time, those athletes, they're not realizing how much, though, they are catalysting those athletes that are starters. Those starters want to maintain their spots too. They want to be pushed themselves. And the girls who aren't starting are actually fulfilling maybe even a more critical role sometimes off the court because they're pushing their teammates to continue working hard while they're pushing themselves to continue working hard. From the outside, it's such a beautiful thing to recognize and reward. But when you're in it and you're saying, you're talking about like the individual aspect of it, it isn't fair. And I think that is the beauty of volleyball, especially that we're all there for the same reasons and we might be fulfilling those different roles, but we also have to accept them. And once you break out of that acceptance, I think the rest of your athletic career, no matter where it takes you, can be so amazing and you can get so much more out of it versus just quitting your sophomore, junior year in high school because you're not the starter or you had to make JV as a junior. And I think that's a topic I always go back to because I've coached girls on both sides where they might not have loved being on JV as a junior, but they were grateful to be a part of a team and wanted to make varsity the following year. And then I've had the opposite where I've had multiple girls quit because we didn't have enough varsity positions, but still wanted them in the program and as a part of those teams, and they still deserved a role. I just think it's really interesting. We also need to work on accepting our roles and situations and allow the entitlement to take a backseat sometimes.
It's something that if we can help our athletes understand that this is a journey
Mhm.
and process. And sometimes, right, to be successful, there's a process that is called hard work. You don't always get what you want. There's failure involved. And there's moments where you try, fail, and adjust, repeat over and over and over. And so it's one of these things that's really special when I start to see athletes and teams and it just starts to click. And so, again, there's a commitment piece that can I stay committed? And Brooke talks about this when she was on our podcast. Can I stay committed to the good and the bad? Can I still stay committed to the strategies, the work ethic, the things that my team needs? Can I stay committed to my teammate when I have that role that I want or when I don't? Can I stay committed to giving 100% in practice physically? Can
Mhm.
I stay committed to continue to train my mental mindset when maybe our team isn't doing it as a whole today in practice, but maybe I need to go back and revisit my mindset journal? And so all of these things play into being elite. It's just, can you choose to do it when
Mhm.
it's not comfortable, when things aren't going your way? And can you do it in the struggle? And so, again, a lot of reframing, a lot of training response, and it's key things that success, there's a recipe. And it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of consistency and discipline. And to teach our
Yeah.
athletes to have that, I don't know. Very few have I met that are super, super successful that had it all handed to them. Because I
Mhm.
think behind closed doors, there's a lot that maybe we as the public don't get to see and we never will see. But there's a lot of respect for those that are grinding in the dark and
Yeah.
that are putting in that work that don't have the praise. And we hope that they get to see that success somewhere in their journey. It might not always be where we think it will show up.
Yeah, it always looks more easier said than done from the outside perspective, and even talking with Brooke and hearing her, position acceptance journey was incredible to share because if it can happen at that level and you can still be so successful, then it can also guide you there through any level. And vulnerability isn't always comfortable, especially in competitive environments. If there's coaches listening right now, can you share with them how they could create a safe space for teams to be vulnerable with each other?
And we always like to say at Max Out, we focus on the performance side. We
Mhm,
focus on training these skills like the elite mindset, team chemistry, ultimate trust. And we do not do anything clinical, which I love
mhm,
because I always like to say this too. We want to erase the negative stigma around right the mental side of things, but we partner with professionals. There's resources at the high school, there are awesome teams at the universities in the sports psychology department, but we pair really, really well. So I advise my coaches, one, to make sure you know the right contacts and resources in your space at whatever level you're coaching. And then number two is we want a psychological safety. And our coaches are big leaders in this. And so being able to, one, manage your space, understanding what can you help with and what do we need to give to a professional. But number two is let's talk about our relationship with failure, not success. I know I said
yeah,
that right. Is that in your gym, what is failure? And is it okay? And how can you fail forward? And teaching your athletes, it's safe to have communication. And
mhm,
what does having hard conversations look like? And how are you as a coach going to be able to handle that as well? Because I think our coaches are the best example of how they want their gyms to be and their teams to be. And so that psychological safety, it's one, making sure your resources, but two, being able to communicate effectively what your standard in the gym is. And that is communication safe. And what is it like, right timing? I'm sure no coach wants playing time conversation right after a match. So it's setting your standards of when to communicate, what's acceptable, what's not. What does that failure look like in the gym and how can we learn from it? And we are rooted in positive psychology.
for newer coaches, where they're just getting into maybe taking a U club team or they're maybe coaching freshmen, high school, and just starting out. Do you have any advice to them on how to find their voice as a coach and what coaching philosophies might align best with them and finding the balance of obviously not being the toughest coach, like you're saying, going down their throats immediately after making mistakes, but also not only being friends with them either and finding that hybrid option that works the best for their team?
For all new coaches, key things, one, thank you for getting into the coaching business. It's not easy, but I think there's two key things to success to really start to set that framework is find a coach that's modeling the behaviors, the gym and the teams that you respect or that you hey, go study, ask to be mentored, ask to observe in a gym. Go take initiative by self to a coach that you respect and ask the questions of how they do it. And a key thing too, as you look for mentors or other coaches you want to learn from, watch how they evolve over decades, over years. I think there's such key things that we can learn from those that have gone before us. If I want to be great, I want to go study under someone great. And so that's the first key thing. Second key thing is I think when you're starting at those ages or a new coach to it, I want you to be able to ask what your coaching philosophy or your coaching why is. Do you have core values? Do you have a set of values that don't depend on winning championships or big moments or winning against that rival team? It's not just win, outcome, outcome, outcome. Can you develop? If I'm not true to my values, I want to be hot and cold every day I walk into practice. I'm going to forget my why, and then I'm not going to be a great coach to the youth because ultimately we're teachers.
Consistency is really important from a coaching standpoint. I think athletes know when you are being genuine, right? And when you are being consistent, and they can feel when you default from that and you're kind of picking and choosing what those values and morals are. And I see a lot of the most successful teams that I've watched or been a part of were the ones that you could really lean back and rely on your coach no matter what you're going through or your
Mm.
teammates are going through, both on and off the court, that you can look back and still rely on them to be that stability, that foundation, and that, sure, maybe certain drills will change, maybe positions will change, but the backbone of that team is still there. And I think it's extremely effective as a coach to have that mindset. I appreciate you sharing that. I do want to ask you, walk us through what a typical mindset training session with you looks like. What are you actually working on? And you also offer team training. So what is the difference between individual mindset coaching versus a team?
We offer it from the club level, high school, college, and then also professional. And so with that, right, you would have said coach reach out. It's a beginning of the season to the end of the season. You're going to get one of us that's consistently meeting and training that team. And we'll go through a second scorecard. We'll learn team values. We'll touch base on some team exercises, ultimately teach the elite mindset. But we're going to train your mind for battle. We'll train your team for battle. And then we'll get you ready for postseason. And so that's a start to finish season for teams. And this can be either gender, any sport. I think we've had success in different areas. And then the one thing that I'm really passionate about is my one on one athletes. Everyone you've seen on the podcast or my Instagram, they have given permission to be public and they have chosen to be vulnerable to share their struggle to victory story. And some of them are still in the journey. And that's awesome because I think we need to hear that. Mindset training isn't a one stop and it's done. It is trained consistently, just like you would train leadership, communication, physical reps. Your mind is a muscle. And so there's consistency for that. So a lot of my one-on-ones, a lot of them are confidential, but we'll jump on Zoom for about 30 minutes per session, sometimes an hour if they're more mature and can handle that. And we'll go through everything similar to what the team's mindset training is, but then I can dive deeper into specific needs. For example, right, I have an athlete that's going to go play in their district match tonight. They just needed to do a tweaking of their self-talk strategy. They have a written out reminder that they do to bring them back to center if they make a mistake or the game is really up and there's a lot of pressure, the crowd is wild. They can look on their wrist and have their strategy and they know what to do. And so I just say that every athlete needs something different, but that one-on-one mindset training, it's when the athletes are most consistent, they're ready to learn, and they're committed to applying strategies. We can meet as often as they want, but it's only upon what the athlete needs. So sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes it's once every blue moon because that's what they want. I would say commitment is so key.
Thanks for sharing that. With you working with so many athletes at a college level, professional level, and national level, how has it been for you, I guess, watching professional volleyball explode in the US now?
I think a lot of those athletes that have gone before us, the decades that have paved the way for, right, so many professional volleyball leagues in the United States. I want to thank the international volleyball scene for holding and hosting that prior to having it in the US. But, for athletes out there, multi sports, I think if you can when you're young, try them all. But volleyball is so exciting. And I think investors outside of sport are seeing this. But it's just another, I don't know, it's a spotlight of a sport that can teach you life lessons. And with all of those professional opportunities available, I think it sparks dreams in our youth that could be me someday. So for all
Yeah.
of the professional athletes out there paving the way, everything that you're going through is paying off. How you handle NIL, how you handle yourself on the media, how you handle getting drafted and then you get drafted to another team, how you're handling putting on the headset and you're talking about your teammates and the match and what made you successful. That is all playing into the hope of what professionals, women's volleyball in the United States is, but it's because of their examples and how they present themselves publicly that my youth thanks you for, because I know it's not always easy. Pro sports, try being the number one on your team, and then you have 20 other girls that are also the number one on their
Mhm.
team. And, Doc has done an integral part in working with, the president, Diane Mendenhall, with the Omaha Supernovas. And he talks a lot about, we did a couple podcasts with Diane and Brooke and Sydney, and there'll be more coming up here in the near future. But what does it look like for team chemistry for that group? Because it is so hard and the level of success, it's really, really small to be able to get the role that you want. But how can I be a great teammate and then be ready to go be big in a moment? And so that pro space will also teach our athletes the next level of what it means to train mindset and to train physical skill because everybody is good. And we'll have several that are going to be on the Olympic team in the future too. And again, that's another high stakes playing for your country. So I'm thankful for all those athletes that have went before, and we need to hear more of those stories and to get those public because we have a lot of young little girls that want to be just like them.
Which it's incredible to watch this path be paved. Do you see at that level more athletes embracing this with the mental training and acceptance, or have you still seen?
Yeah, and I think with the professional space, and I'm very thankful for the partnership that Max Out Mindset has with the Omaha Supernovas from the very beginning. As that league started, it was a really cool conversation that Diane had with Doc, and so with that, I think there's a lot of ways to win. And there's a lot of skills and opportunities that you can provide a team to do that. And so I know the Supernovas, just from example, that's my only frame of reference,
Yeah.
actually have a performance team. So they have a doctors, nutritionists, they have a
Mhm.
really great personal training, a strength and conditioning side of things. There's a mental health. So what Diane did really, really well with her administrative staff is find the right people, experts in their field, to train the entire athlete. And there's a lot of things that are intangible that have nothing to do with volleyball skill set. They have everything to deal with the human level. And that's where I think the Supernovas started it off from the very beginning. I can't speak to all professional teams that do this. I know Team USA has their own type of things. My business partner Doc works with TKN, so they represented on the beach side of things there in Paris this past
Yeah.
Olympics, and so he's a part of their performance team, which is really cool to see. Taryn and Kristen have been wonderful. They're also on the podcast and have had a lot of success recently. But it's a credit to those athletes that are buying into training the whole athlete and that training the mindset isn't weak. It's actually a strength. And those that do it really, really well start to see that success.
When you have those resources, it is a game changer because until it's talked about, you don't really understand what you're able to leverage or what you're able to ask help for, what you're able to be honest and transparent about. And everything that you've shared today, I was like, wow, I wish I had that, in my high school days or that my teammates did, and that we were able to bond in a way that we all understood what we all needed at the same time, like our individual needs, but then also our team needs. And it is a game changer. I do think that separates great teams from elite teams as well. And when you have that pressure on the court, you're able to have those conversations. It's incredible. So I appreciate just everything that you've shared today. It's so insightful. As a coach, I know we talked about creating vulnerability with a team and creating a safe space. Is there a good way to go about opening them up further? Maybe they don't want to talk about something or they don't want to be open about it versus waiting for them to come to you. What are those key things that you can maybe say to your athlete that you're noticing having that negative internal talk?
Yeah. And as from a coach's perspective, and even with the athletes I train one on one, I need to build trust right away. So simply, I need to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit in a professional standpoint of letting them in. They're just tying their shoelaces, putting on their volleyball gear, and how was your day? Get to know them first, build relationships first as a human. And then, right, and they're appropriate, share the expectation of what you're going to bring as a coach. I think there's a level of a standard and accountability that our athletes crave. There's a routine that they crave. And I think that they want to be excellent just like we want them to be excellent. And as long as our goals are aligned and I'm helping said athlete go get her goal, then we're on the right path to go have some of these hard conversations. But to me, as a coach, when I make a mistake or I don't show up right, I've got to own that and I've got to say, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that goes back to the vulnerability and safe space that you're creating for your team environment is it should be a two-way street on feedback. You're not allowing your athlete to come at you in a negative manner, but I think constructive feedback, we all have ways to improve. The standard that we set as coaches is the standard that they're going to be expecting and being able to mirror for the future. So I think
Yeah.
that's really important, especially as adults and especially as these younger athletes become adults. It's all what they're seeing and hearing and how we handle it. If we're not the ones taking accountability, then they're not going to take accountability either for where they're lacking or what the things they have to work on. And I think that goes to the parent conversation is most parents want to, jump up right away after a match and say, well, what can my daughter do or kid do to get more playing time or play the position that they want? And it's like, well, believe it or not, your child probably knows exactly what they need to do and exactly what they need to work on. And they're just not giving you that accountability factor that they already are aware about.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
I always like to tell my parents they're the MVP because they're usually in the car ride home, sitting at the dinner table, or the first person that right our kids want to go up to after a match. And I say,
yeah,
your response is everything.
mhm.
So parents, it's okay to let your kids struggle. It's okay to let your kids figure this out and use sport to learn life's biggest lessons.
Yeah.
And for you in your home, can it also be a psychologically safe home to process the success, but to process the improvement, to process the struggle? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of parents are successful. They know it's not easy. So can you
Mhm.
love your kids? Can you be consistent in the success? And can you be consistent in the improvement and the grind? And I think
Mhm.
for some of our parents, it's really hard to do. And it's almost, releasing that control of a situation. But some of the most successful parents and homes, because I can see how their athletes train with me, they are some of the most. They have a strict standard, but there's a level of grace, a level of
Mhm.
love, and they're adapting and evolving as parents too.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Grace and understanding. I appreciate you sharing that. What college volleyball team are you following closest? And I feel like I might know your answers, but I wanna still ask you the question.
Man, you're really putting me on the spot. I will say this, I watch a lot of college volleyball, but I am very blessed. I do follow, Nebraska volleyball. I follow Creighton volleyball. I have a couple athletes at Utah, TCU. I've been following Wyoming volleyball. They're a great partnership that I have. And then I have a couple of other divisions, College of St. Benedict down in the D3 MIAC, and then a big fan of, one of my dear friends up there at Michigan State, Kristen Kelsey and her crew. So I am a gym rat. And so I watch a lot of volleyball. Those are to name a few that I follow closely and very thankful for those relationships.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that and go green always, but that's my
Right.
own bias. And then last question for you. So what was the best mindset advice that you've ever received from somebody else?
Ooh, that's a good question. Typically, I ask those hard questions, but that's a good one. The best mindset advice, there's two. One was from Doc, and he from the very beginning said that I've got everything it takes to be great. And when he first said that, I was like, please, like what? But it was the belief because of the things that you do and your commitment, your preparation, your day to day humility, his belief that he believed in me to be a part of his business, that I am great and I have everything it takes to be great. I know that sounds super easy and super simple when I say it, but to receive it, and that was the lesson that he taught me is I needed to learn to receive, right? That. And that's a truth that he saw. And he has had so many years with so many teams, so many high level from pros, Olympians, all the way on down, and even his years in this psych world. And
Mhm.
he took the time to tell me that. Then the power I needed to do was receive and believe it. And then the other really big key piece of mindset advice that I've got is stop comparing and give yourself grace. Again, super, super easy
Mhm.
to say, but to really believe in self. And then comparing is a thief of joy. And so I think my athletes, we all work through that in some way, but that was some of the best advice given to me.
More than ever, especially with social media, and comparison is huge. And I do see that all of the time with my athletes, especially for volleyball. You're comparing yourself to the other person in that same position. And it's like, well, you still have your own individual things to bring to the table as well. I really appreciate you sharing that with us today and everything else. And where can our listeners find you and Max Out Mindset?
Yeah, you bet. I am not brave enough to be on TikTok. So sorry, athletes. But maybe someday one of my athletes will make one for me. I have no idea. But I'm on Instagram. So it's at Max Out Mindset Jess. There are underscores in between those words. And then I can be found at your local convention center. So we'll be traveling, this winter for qualifiers. I will be at Triple Crown in Kansas City, and athletes can also just drop in my DMs, get my contact information, and lastly, maxoutmindset.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jess, for being here on She Aced That. You shared so many amazing things with us today. And thank you all for joining, and we will see you all next Wednesday.
Thank you.